Welcome to the Colors Delight for Life. It's about life, where we share our experience, strength, and hope to help others so they have a better understanding. Thank you. Hi, welcome back. I can't hear you.
Yes, it would help if I'd unmuted myself. Greetings, hi. I'm so honoured to have this opportunity to be here with you. My name's Vanessa Mary, and I'm a lifestyle coach, and I'm based in England, as you may hear from my accent, and I specialise in supporting women to help them to feel more confident, and I do that in a number of ways, which is around health, nutrition, and mindset coaching.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the first 10 years of my life were rather traumatic. I was literally born into a situation where my mother was unable to care for me because of her own mental health issues, which meant that I became a ward of the court. I did end up being put in the care of my family, but I was still under the court system. It meant that when I was a teenager, I did struggle with other aspects of dealing with that trauma. So the first 10 years were a mix of being not only in my family home, but also being in other people's homes as a foster child. Now, I do have very limited memories of being fostered as a small child, but I know that that happened because I had a social worker. So I had a social worker all the way up until I was around 17, I think it was. So yeah, it was a mixed childhood because of my mum, mainly my mum's experience, and also the fact that my mum was in what you'd call a psychiatric unit. So I was also, in those days, this is the 70s, they wouldn't do this nowadays, but in those days, the young child was able to go onto the ward. So that's what I saw. I actually saw adults going through that distress. It was rather upsetting. Some of those memories have stayed with me. So yeah, how did I overcome it? Um, it's really hard to describe. I've actually been going through some healing very recently. And I know that one of the things that I've spoken about with my own healer is resilience, was something that I've obviously built up. I've built up my strength. I think also I've used my childhood experience to really almost think about how I could make a difference to other people. So yeah, it was a mixed time, put it that way. So that was the first 10 years.
Now we go into ages 10 to 20.
Oh gosh, 10 to 20. So we're going real far back. So let me break it up. Okay, so I'm going to break it up between 10 and 15. So when I was 10, I actually left my grandmother's home and I went into what you'd call foster care full time. So that was very strange because now I'm dealing with being in other people's houses, being with a new family, and also being around other children. Because when I was with my grandmother, I was the only child. And I had a very close relationship with an aunt who I may tell you about her story as we go into this conversation. But yeah, so being in foster care from the age of 10 to 15 meant that I was around other children, which I wasn't used to that environment. And I suppose I did find that quite challenging because as the only child originally, I had a lot of attention. And my grandparents, they were quite, I suppose, successful, financially successful. So I never had to deal with like poverty, or there wasn't really that, I can't explain it, but now when I hear people talk about their childhood around money and those type of situations, that just wasn't the life that I had. It was more that emotional trauma that I was experiencing, but I always had decent shoes.
That can be just as trying. Emotional trauma can be just as trying as far as that goes.
Exactly. And now I can see, Andrea, that what my grandmother was actually doing was buying my love in a lot of areas. Because there was some areas where I feel that she could have stepped in a bit more. But as I've made it into a joke, but I always had decent shoes. I always had the best clothing and things like that. But then becoming a foster child between the age of 10 and 15, I think my awareness of the lack that other people were experiencing around money was becoming more apparent, because the conversation was shifting around that particular topic. So I'm now in a situation where I'm having to deal with being with other children who are coming from their own broken homes, or I can't remember some of their situations. I think one of them was in care because their parents had died. There was all different reasons for being in care, and we were all kind of there together. But one of the expectations was that I was going to be a care provider to these children and help out with these children, because I was like the oldest foster child, which I kind of got on with at first. But then after a while, that became challenging within itself, because I suppose I just was wondering, well, what's happened to my life? One moment I've got all this attention from my family, and then the next minute I'm like running almost like a kindergarten, like looking after all these different children who I knew were not related to me, because I knew about my care experience. So I did leave that environment. I went to live with another foster parent, but she was horrible. I'm sorry. It was, when I reflect back, obviously you don't know what you don't know. In hindsight, I thought that I was going to get a nicer foster mum, but the foster mum that I had, she was perfect. Because the other woman, she wasn't really that nice to me. And then that meant that I'm about 15 now, and I'm like, do you know what? I've had enough of all this, and I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. So I took myself off, and I made my way to my dad's mom, who I'd never really had regular contact with her, because there was like a family feud between the two grandmothers, like stemming back from when I was a baby. But this grandmother's now delighted, because she never really had access to me. And then one day I just turn up on her door. So she was, over the moon about that. So I stayed with grandmother for a couple of years. So that brings me to around about 17. Am I about 17? Yeah, I'm about 17, something like that. But I was so unsettled that it's as much as I did okay at school. So I was never the top of the class, but I was like above average. So I got decent grades. But emotionally, again, when I reflect back and the decisions and the things that I was doing at 16, 17, it's because I was so unsettled. I didn't really know where my place was. All this time, I've had very limited contact with my mom, and she's actually, during this period, she's left the country. So even though she's still suffering from a long-term mental illness, she actually ends up going abroad. So I feel that by the time I'm a teenager, the actual feelings of abandonment were probably coming on stronger, but I didn't have the comprehension to really articulate those feelings. So it turns out that, I was like, oh, what do we do? Oh, we go out, do we go and party? And it was like I was partying a lot. a lot more than I should have been at that age. Um, and yeah, just not really making the great choices, I would say, as a teenager. So nothing criminal. There was no criminal activities or anything like that, but just easily led, with the party girls and the party boys. But again, when I think back, these were other teenagers whose like family, they were having other issues as well. They were probably coming from troubled families. So it didn't take long for me to meet a young man. And yeah, I met a young man, and I think I probably put all of my, this love that I was searching for from my parents, because I've not spoken about my dad at all in this conversation, apart from to introduce his mum. My dad's just not in the picture. He actually lived in a different city to me. He visits me throughout my childhood, but it's nothing really to write home about. So I believe that I was looking for stability, and I thought I was going to get that through a relationship, but I made a wrong choice. I ended up becoming pregnant at, I think I'm about 17 and a half. I don't know. You've really made me go back in my memory box here. So yeah, I fall pregnant young. But I was actually at college. So now I've broken my college education, and people are just starting to write me off. It's like, oh, you've got this care background, your mum's this, your dad's that. And now look at you, you've gone and got yourself pregnant. And I'm like, whoa, everything that you said that was going to happen to these are other people's thoughts and beliefs that they're telling me. Oh, I'm now a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I become pregnant at a young age. So by the time I'm 18, I have my beautiful baby, because I've decided that I'm keeping her, even though there wasn't really that much talk about, not carrying on with the pregnancy, but there was a lot of disappointment. But I just overcame, I wasn't really concerned about what other people were thinking about my decision. I was just holding fast with my decision. So then, yeah, I have my daughter, and now there was a slight period of homelessness. So I go into like a young mum's hostel with the baby. And then I'm allocated, I suppose you'd call it social housing if this is an American audience. So I'm like living in, well, we call it no, it wasn't a council house, it was a housing association, but I'm getting help from the government to sort of keep the house and whatever. And then I'm suddenly in this house with nothing apart from a baby. And I'm like, okay, right, I've got a baby. We have no furniture. We have, I probably had like the basics, the bed, the cot, but it's literally, there's nothing. And I'm like, okay, I've got this baby, but I'm going to put all my energy into her, and we're going to make something. And yeah, I think that brings me up to about age 20.
Okay, how about 20 to 30?
Oh gosh, right. So 20 to 30. So when I'm 20, I'm single. I've realized that, just rewind a little bit, age 18, when I fall pregnant, the relationship with the baby's dad was going nowhere. So I'm now raising the baby on my own. And when I get to about 19, I can remember having a relationship with a man who was slightly older, but not that much older. And I thought, okay, yeah, he's gonna like take me on and blah blah blah. And he just was not really that interested. And I was like, oh, okay then. So that didn't work out for me. And then I have some time on my own. And then I'm getting into singing. It was just like a family hobby. And I'm around a lot of musicians. And my daughter is also around musicians as well. She's quite a musical being. And I noticed that there was somebody who was around who was more experienced in the music industry and was always trying to sort of provide knowledge and advice. Now, I'm not a singer at all, but in those days, I was trying to be a backing singer, I suppose. I'm literally not much is happening, so I've got a lot of time on my hands. And yeah, so this gentleman said that he would like to help me, to train my voice and everything. But it didn't really take long to work out that actually was actually interested in a relationship with me. But I didn't like him in that way. But again, looking back, I was suffering from low self-esteem. My confidence just wasn't there. I'm still quite easily led, I'm still quite vulnerable, but there was a significant age gap between us. So I decided to give him a chance, and we do have a relationship. And again, he's more like a father figure. So remember, in my story, my father is actually absent from this story. So I'm having a relationship for, I think we were together for about 2 years. We were actually together longer than this, but around about the 2 year mark, I thought, my daughter's on her own. I don't really want her to be an only child. It'd be nice if we could have a child. Now, he wasn't really that keen. I do need to make that clear. He is an older person to me. He did actually have other children. And again, there were actually warning signs about, his kind of like lifestyle or whatever. But I think I was just, when you're suffering from low self-esteem, you cannot see things that are quite obvious to another person. And even when people try and point things out to you, you're not really kind of seeing the message that they're trying to tell you. So he was reluctant, but we do have a child together. So we have this child together. I've now got a beautiful baby boy, and I'm about 21. So I'm still very young, but I'm buzzing. I've got my boy, I've got my girl. And I was thinking, we're going to be together and everything's going to be great. And now I'm ready to kind of like think, okay, I've got 2 children now. I've dropped out of college, so I didn't finish my college. Money's not really flowing as I feel that it should be. How are we going to work this out? Now, he gives me all these dreams and ideas of all these things that he's going to be doing with his life. And I'm just like lapping it all up. I'm like, oh, yeah, great. After about literally now, about 3.5 years, 4 years, it's apparent that everything he said he was working on, I don't know what was materializing. So I decided that it was time for me to go back to college. But before I go to college, there was practical things I needed to overcome, like learning how to drive. So it wasn't easy for me to learn how to drive because this man is not really supporting me. So financially and with the children, but I did it. And then I decided that I'm going to go back to college. Same situation. He wasn't really supportive of me. He wasn't really helping me with the children. So I'm having to sort of ask all the members of the family. But I passed my, what you would call, it was a college course because it was like a refresher to get me into university. So now I'm the transformation of me starting to happen. And I feel that he was noticing certain changes were coming about. And particularly when I not only learned how to drive, but I was actually had a car. I'm becoming more independent. And I feel that his own confidence about what I was going to be doing with my life was starting to unravel him. So there's cracks starting to show in this relationship. So I go to university and I do really well at university. I do have like part-time jobs in between all of this, going back to college and whatever, but he's not helping me. This is the point that I'm really trying to make. Even though I'm in a relationship that I stayed in for, I think it was about 7 years, I'm actually on my own. He's there, but he's not an active parent. He's not a supportive partner or anything like that. So I go to university and I pass my university degree. And obviously it is a milestone because while everybody else at university is partying and, maybe they've had a gap year, they went to a different country or whatever, and then they're coming to do this uni, I'm like literally rocking up at the lessons saying, oh, I've been up and I've had to do the cleaning and I've had to do the washing and I've taken my children to school, and no, I can't come to the pub with you. I've got to go. I've got to pick my children up. So, this family life is very much part of my journey of getting through university. So by the time I finished, with a very good result as well, I'm like, wow, life is going to start changing now. And yeah, there is a gap in the sense of me and this man, so my son's father, with the relationship, the gap's becoming more apparent. So we do break up. So then, as a well, like semi-professional, because what I haven't told you in all this story is in this time, I am doing a lot of voluntary work to increase my skills. So I'm volunteering, I'm now becoming a chair, like so much was happening in the background, which is about development. So even when I was pregnant with my son, so actually this is before I went to university, I'm doing some kind of like, I think it was called office skills. It was like an office skills course. And it was apparent that I was picking this up very quickly. And they were really encouraging me. And this group specialized in helping parents on a low income get back into education. So they were doing a fantastic job. And because they could see how their intervention was helping my path, and I suppose they noticed like the qualities that I have, like I am a giving person. They said, would you mind sitting on our board and, helping the other parents that are coming through? And I was like, yeah, of course, that's not a problem. So I'm on their board in the background. So I'm like, I start off as what you'd call a member of the committee. And then after a while, I become the chairperson of the committee as well. So I'm picking up a lot of transferable skills. So by the time I've literally graduated, my first professional job is quite a decent pay. Whereas my other colleagues, they're just starting out, they don't really have the background life experience. They've gone to different companies, or maybe they've carried on in education and they're still kind of like building up their finances, if that makes sense. So my first professional job, where now I'm about, oh gosh, I've got no idea. I think I'm about 25, something like that. I've got my first professional job, but I've literally said, well, yeah, I've just graduated, but look at what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I haven't just been sitting around, even though I kind of made it sound like that in the beginning of this story. I forgot to tell you about all the volunteering I was doing. So I was doing volunteering from about 18, actually. Just to rewind, that held me in good stead because it meant that I could walk into those interviews and tell these people that were interviewing me about my knowledge of what you'd call the voluntary sector, and how the voluntary sector was expanding and all the opportunities and different things. And I actually studied a degree called international relations. So it was actually it was politics. It was good, what you'd call international politics, but you learn about how to manage things at the local level as well. So I did step into a good job at about 25. So whenever we're only on 25, you want me to carry on? Yeah, okay. So now we're on 25. So I would say my home life is more settled because the focus is on me and my two offspring. I'm not in a relationship that wasn't serving me anymore. I'm just starting that professional career. I've got the income flowing in. So if you remember what I said, I started in a house with nothing, and I'm now in a house. So I've had like nicer houses along the way. So I rent nicer houses. But the house that I take on was from the council, the local council, because I decided it was time to start to buy my own home. And the way how it works in England is if you, I don't know if they do this anymore, but This was the opportunity then. If you rent from the council for a certain number of years, you have the opportunity to then buy that home off the council. And yeah, exactly. It's a brilliant opportunity. And they give you discount as well on the property. So I made what you'd say like a strategic move, even though we were renting in a nicer home in terms of like furniture and decor and things like that. My children, I believe, have always been on the mindset of, I've just spoken to them quite openly and honestly about where I was in my life. And I said to them, look, even though the house isn't going to be as nice, one day mummy will be able to buy the home. So that's what I did. Once I then get this more, what you'd say, professional job, and I've got a regular income coming through, I then make arrangements to buy the house off the property. I think, off the council. I think I had to be here for about 3 years and then I could buy it. So that's what I did. So I buy the home and I start with my renovations on the property. So this puts me at about 25, 26. No, it must be about 27, something like that. And yeah, I did that, but then I had a bright idea that I'm a bit bored. I'm a bit bored of Nottingham where I'm living. I'm going to go and live in Manchester. Oh my gosh. You don't want to take me down that part of the story, please. No. But there is a house.
Yeah.
Because I'm not at 30 yet. There is a house move. I do move to Manchester. So there is a little bit of upheaval for well, not really for me because I'm the adult. But actually, I'm still dealing with the childhood trauma, but I haven't actually dealt with it. But I don't realize this at this stage. So there is upheaval for my offspring. And I think a lot of that decision was around the fact that the two men that I've had these beautiful beings of light with, they are actually not really that nice to me in this city. And the choices that they've made in terms of other relationships and things like that, I feel like they were kind of hanging over me quite a bit. So it was quite, I can't really describe now because I'm not in that space, but at the time it felt suffocating, it felt overwhelming. It felt that as much as I was starting to break through and achieve, I was being held back. So Manchester is a bigger city and there are more opportunities there. So it didn't start off perfectly in terms of the housing transition, but eventually we do get there. I'm there with my offspring and yeah, I'm working for the local council. So I get, and yeah, the first job was with Oldham City Council. So even though I live in Manchester, Oldham was about, I think it was about 30-minute drive, something like that. So I'm working in the next borough. I'm doing okay. And then what do I do? I don't know why. I don't even know. Again, some parts of my memory are quite blurred because I seem to make decisions that when I've looked back, I can't necessarily always work out what triggered the decision. But I know I have the bright idea that, oh, I'm gonna set up my own business. So I was like, yeah, this is great. So I'm doing like research management, and I'm not managing events, but I'm doing research management, and I'm just thinking, oh, I can do this for myself. Anyway, it didn't really work out. Put it that way, it didn't really work out. I did do a stint of what you would call doing events. So I was doing events for social enterprises. So these are social entrepreneurs who have got a social mission, but they're wanting to have a profitable angle to their business that they're then going to put back into their social cause. So I do something to do with workshops and networking and introductions, and it was getting there, but I feel that where I went wrong was trying to expand too quickly. So it did leave me with a situation where it's like, oh, and the recession was coming about as well. This is around 2011, 12. and we were going through another recession here in England. So it wasn't a smart move. What I should have done is like kept my job, went part-time, and then done the business part. Yeah, did the business part-time, but I just wasn't listening. So it was a bit of a tough time, because now, as much as I'd climbed up the financial hill and I thought that, yeah, things are getting better, I took a nosedive. And that was very traumatic for me and my offspring. So I think I'm about 30 now.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, so we've got to go downhill at 30. Oh gosh. Am I 30 at this age? I'm just really trying to think. Okay, no, I must have been past 30. So I think I'm in Manchester for about 7 years in total. The reason why I then have a trigger of how old I was is because I meet Mark, who is my partner now. We've been together for 10 years, no, coming up to 10 years this year. And I'm 45 now. So I must be 35 by the time I meet Mark. So between the age of 30 and 35, I think that there's personal growth in terms of learning about entrepreneurship, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But within that, there is a spark of hope in terms of a relationship. So the relationship at 35, how we meet each other was the most unusual way. It's quite common now because it's called online dating, but 10 years ago, I'm not saying people didn't do it, but it wasn't, I didn't know any friends who'd met people online and were actually still with them, like successfully. So I've had a long spell on my own as a single mom, and my friend and I, who she was also a single mom, we said, oh gosh, people are like meeting each other online. Do you think that you could do that? So we were just like messing about on this app, and she met somebody and I met Mark, and this is a true story. We're both with the two men 10 years later. We've both had little ones with the two men as well. So anybody who's looking for an online relationship, it really can happen and it really can work. So yeah, I meet Mark at 35, and that's when I feel like my life started to turn a corner.
So, okay, what about your 40s? The 5 years into your 40s?
Yeah, but just jump a little bit back. So from 35 to 40, I'm getting over the financial disaster that had happened in the first part of my 30s. So now in my 40s, I started working on my health at 35. Am I 35? Yeah, I'm about 35 when I started to take my health a lot more seriously. And by the time I get to 40, I decided that I wanted to be a fit in my 40s. So I wasn't aiming for to get like really super skinny or slim or anything like that. I just wanted to be strong and fit. So my children now are teenagers. I've got more time on my hands. I was doing things like salsa dancing, playing netball, riding my bicycle, but I wanted the physical fitness. So this is where I'm starting to look at my nutrition. I'm starting to look at my exercise. I'm starting to look at things that I never, in fact, I need to go and grab another glass of water because I'm empty now. But that wasn't my topic of conversation at age 30, talking about water. Like I didn't realize people drank water unless they were exercising, so I'm just looking at health and fitness in a different way. So the first 5 years being 40 is still focused on health and fitness. And Mark and myself have been together for about 8 years, and there were no children involved. And then people start asking, you two are going to have a baby together and all this. And I'm like, well, I'm getting a bit old and it's not really, we were like, it hasn't happened. So maybe it's not supposed to happen for us. So we're doing things like traveling. I'm starting to get into the health and fitness and wellness coaching. So I'm studying as well as working. And then, thinking about how do I help women with this knowledge that I've got and building up my brand and things like that. So I wasn't really thinking about babies, but like I said, I was working on becoming healthy. So at, gosh, how old am I now? So I'm 45 now. I think it's when I'm 43, we conceive a baby. I was like, oh, okay then. I've now got a massive age gap between these offsprings, but I'm going to have another one. Okay then. But it was just really that focus on putting all that love and attention, because my daughter then had a child, so I put all this love, well, both of us have put all our love and energy into our first grandchild. I'm putting love and energy into a business and to the women that I start to help and serve. I'm putting love and energy into my body, making sure that I'm healthy and strong and active and stamina and all this. And it just meant that the alignment, because during this time as well, I'm starting to learn about law of attraction. I'm starting to get more into personal development. So the personal development journey started when I was about 27, but I never really took it that seriously. But everything is just getting more and more magnified. And I feel that the focus wasn't on, even though when we first got together, I was thinking, yeah, it would be nice to have a child together. It didn't happen. But when you become in alignment with yourself in other areas, and you, in a sense, maybe stop putting so much pressure on yourself, then things can happen, and it is really magical. So yeah, we were blessed with our son when I was 43. And the last 2 years have been a mix of becoming a mum again, being a grandmother, being a mother to the older ones, and developing my brand. So been busy.
If there were 3 takeaways you can give our audience, what would they be?
Oh gosh. Okay. So for me, when I talk to women about healthy, active lifestyle, this is what I'm believing should be the focus for you on a daily focus on your healthy, active lifestyle. You can choose what you want. There is so many different ways of looking at what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to be active? Choose one thing if that's all you can manage to do. If you feel that actually I've got a goal today of doing, X number of things that would describe and benefit me from a healthy, active lifestyle perspective, then, put that focus, because you can do that. So your health is your wealth. I would also say that I'm calling it mindset and expansion nowadays. I used to use the term personal development. So however you feel comfortable, whether it is personal development, mindset, expansion, I feel that we always have an opportunity to learn something. So the more you can take on knowledge and wisdom, it can be beneficial for yourself, or it could be beneficial for somebody who may just need to hear that message. So I would definitely recommend, whether it's reading or listening to a podcast like this, do something that you feel is going to help your mind to expand. And I haven't said these in any particular order, but I do feel that to have that connection with, I use the term source energy, the higher power, Whatever word you feel comfortable with. I do believe that, to have that connection is important because it's a personal relationship. And what I'm really discovering, even over the last 2 years, living through the times that we are living in, when you go within, then you get more answers about what you should be doing with your life. But it's going within and having that trust and having that faith in yourself. And also, whatever word you feel comfortable with, whether it's God, source energy, the most high, the creator, but really, having that daily connection with the higher self, your higher consciousness, is, for me, it has made a big difference in my life.
I think our audience is going to get a lot out of this. And thank you for being on my podcast. Have a great one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to Claire's Delight for Life. It's about life. I hope you enjoyed our podcast as much as I did, and I hope you have a great day. I'd love to let you know about a new book coming out, and it's a great help for those who, and including you, to deal with life. It's called Overcoming Depression, Anxiety, PTSD, and Stress. Who couldn't use a book like this? And it's a great program. And the book and audio are going to be made available on Audible and Amazon. We also have we are on all the social platforms, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, and TikTok, and just about anything else you can think of. With all that being said, we also have some other wonderful books that you can get on Amazon and Audible and on our website too, which is declaresdelightforlife.com. Again, that's declaresdelightforlife.com. And those books are Clutter to Declutter. And another one is 28 Days to Declutter Your Mind. The other one is Secrets to Declutter Your Mind Now. These were written with lots of love and experience, these books, to really help you on your journey in life, because I know, having gone through so much in my life, these are written from the heart to see that you too can succeed despite your situations. And I just want you guys to know that we do have a 180-day guarantee that if any of these don't work for you, you can just email us or at support@declaresdelightforlife.com, and we will refund your money with no questions asked, because we believe that a no questions asked guarantee is the best way to have a great relationship with you. And with that said, you know what? I hope you enjoyed this episode of Declares Delight for Life. It's about life, sharing your experience, strength, and hope.